Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this, our first ever virtual conference. Who could have thought for 1 minute that we'd have to hold conference in this way? Obviously, last year we got hit by those debilitating cyber attacks which forced us to cancel conference. And this year, the country, and indeed globally, we've been hit by this deadly coronavirus, which has taken so many lives. We've had to police in a different way. We've had to do things in a different way. And one of those is this virtual conference. And people have asked, why are we holding a virtual conference? Well, there's a number of questions that we need your views on. There's going to be some votes later on, and you will know from the delegate packs that have been sent to you what those questions are going to be. You'll hear shortly from Simon Kempton, our National Treasurer, but the way that we get those responses from yourself has got to be, as far as our rules are concerned, in a conference. And this virtual conference is the best way to do that in this current pandemic that we're in the grip of. And when I talk about policing having to do things differently, we absolutely have. Policing has stepped up during this crisis. We've done things in a way that we would never have expected to have done. And it's our colleagues who are at the forefront of that, and I know you're there supporting them every day. And if policing a global pandemic was not tough enough for our colleagues, over recent days and weeks, we've seen the anger and the frustration because of events overseas that have spilled over into our streets, where the level of violence aimed at some of our colleagues has been horrendous. But again, it's you, our local Fed reps, who've been there picking up the pieces, quite literally, and giving that support to our colleagues who've needed it. It's at times like this that we need to remind ourselves that we have to be there for each other and we have to support each other. Policing is so tough at the best of times, but over recent months, the pressure has really been full on. And not only for our members, but for their families. I hear time and time again from colleagues, and more increasingly from members of their family, of the pressure that they're under, but also the support that you, our Fed reps, are giving them. And the work of the Federation continues. At a local level, you are the credibility of the organisation. You are the ones who are looking after our colleagues at all times of day and night. Our members expect an awful lot from the Federation, and rightly so. You are that helping hand when they need it the most. Whether that's representing them throughout the most difficult and complex of cases, or whether it's just giving them that shoulder to cry on when they need it most. You're there for them, and that means so much. At a national level, the work continues. The Police Protections Bill, which you may have heard quite a bit about, and this is where specials will get, if they want it, become members of the Federation. It's where police drivers will get better protection. It's where the police covenant will become enshrined in law. And it's where those who assault our colleagues can expect harsher sentences. All of that legislation is going through Parliament, which is a really good thing. That's something that we should celebrate. Now, as an organisation, I accept that we're never going to please everybody. But the work that we're doing, whether that's at local and national level, whatever role that you have within the organisation, within the Police Federation of England and Wales, we're doing some incredibly important work. It's benefiting our members, it's benefiting their families. That's something we should all be proud of. We certainly don't join policing to get thanked, and we certainly don't become a Fed rep to get thanked. But it's important for people like me to say thank you to you. The work that you do, very often unseen, very often goes without recognition, is essential, it's important, and it makes a difference. Thank you so much for everything you do. And I want to talk about this virtual conference and what happens next. So in a moment, I'll hand over to our National Treasurer, Simon Kempton, who will talk through why we are asking these questions of you. I've said before, you've had your delegate pack. It's really important that you will have read that homework that we set you. And then you'll hear from Simon. And then after Simon's presentation has finished, we've had a number of questions that have already been sent to us. And we will do our best to answer those questions. And I'm hoping that in Simon's presentation, he will cover many of the questions that have already been asked. Then after the question session, the question and answer session, then we'll move to the vote. So the vote will be sent to you on your devices, your phone or your laptop, and you will have half an hour before the vote closes. and then there'll be another half hour for the vote to be ratified. I'll talk through this again later on to remind you it's really important you have your say. This is your opportunity to shape the future of the organisation. So please, hear what Simon says. Then we'll do the question and answer session. Then it'll move into the vote. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Ideally, we'd all be in Manchester, hearing about the work that we're doing, hearing about policing, but we can't do that because of the reasons I've explained. So thank you, and I'll now hand over to Simon Kempton.
Good morning, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today about the vote that we'll be taking later. As you know, it's in relation to the amount we charge for membership of the Federation, and if the vote goes through, there's 3 things that I want to do with that additional income, and I'll speak about them as we go through. But in short, we have to repair the damage that we've done to our national reserves, while spending more money on our members and giving more support to our reps. But what does it cost to be a member of the Federation? Well, this is an easy one because it says at the bottom of our pay slips it costs £21.58, except that isn't what it costs. Because we can claim tax relief on those subs as a professional subscription, which means that our tax codes are adjusted and we actually pay less tax. The actual cost to our members is just £17.26 per month. And that amount hasn't changed for a decade. That decade saw austerity across policing with government cuts leading to far fewer officers, and that meant a much reduced income. And austerity meant that we were receiving 0 and 1% pay rises. Our members just couldn't afford that rise in membership costs then. But at the same time, we didn't just maintain service to our colleagues, we expanded it, plugging those gaps left behind by government cuts when we increased welfare provision for our members. But how big should the reserves be? And there's no easy answer to that because different organisations approach this differently. Some have vast reserves and some have none. But as a rule of thumb, most organisations would look towards having 12 months operating costs in reserve. But we shouldn't measure our financial success just by how big that reserve fund is, but actually on whether we can strike the balance between protecting our future and diverting more money to directly support our colleagues. And currently our reserves lie at approximately £8.6 million, and that's the equivalent of about 3.5 months operating costs. We've now reached the point, after a decade of using those reserves to maintain services, that we must look to removing our reliance on drawing from that fund. But to even consider a change to subscription levels, we must be able to look our members in the eye and tell them that we're efficient in the way we use their money. And over the last few years, we've been working on a raft of new policies and procedures to ensure that we can do just that. We introduced financial governance policies which ensure that our members' money is spent correctly and ethically. We've introduced oversight with both an internal auditor and we employed KPMG, one of the biggest firms of external auditors, to ensure that we've got those levels of scrutiny. We've improved the service we give to our branches and to our members whilst cutting overall staffing costs by £240,000. And we introduced what we know as the affordability test, and simply, this is just using the same approach to budgeting that we use at home. We will not spend more money than we earn, and that's to prevent us having to rely on and deplete those reserves. But that raises the question, what is our income and what are our costs? Well, broadly, our income comes into 3 categories. External income, so for example, where an outside agency might pay to use the facilities here. Secondly, investment income from our reserves, which at the start of the year we'd expected to draw around £350,000 from. And these are really important elements because they take some of that funding burden away from our members. But of course we're a subscription-based organisation and this makes up around 97% of our income. And yet, like everyone else, like all of us, our costs continue to rise year on year. In fact, each year they rise by between £900,000 and £1 million. And this is largely due to inflation and giving our staff across the organisation a pay rise in line with what we receive. But I think we're spending our members' money in the right places. It's heavily weighted towards claims, more than £10 million a year. And then our branch network at more than £6.5 million a year. And that's only right, Because for our members, they want and they need to see the Federation visible and active locally. So our spend on our branch network, well, it's vital to them and it's vital to us. But what will happen if we don't increase the sub-levels? We'll have to cut our budget further, even more than the cuts we made last year. This will mean spending less money on our members as costs overtake our income again. It will mean less provision on welfare at a time when they, our members, they're pushing themselves to incredible levels to protect the public during the COVID outbreak. And it will mean less support for you, our reps, not giving you the tools that you need to support our members. And on this slide, every part of those blue columns above the red line, and that's our income, that illustrates the increasing cuts that we'd have to make each year. But what if we do vote today to slightly raise our subs? Well, as I said earlier, first this allows us to better secure our future, to ensure that we're here for members not just now but tomorrow and for years to come. And we can begin to spend more on those members in the places that matter most to them to ensure that they see the value that we give for our membership. This might include having a fighting fund so that we can afford to fight those legal battles that mean the most to our members. And it will mean being able to support our reps better, to give our reps the training and the tools that they need when our members need them. In fact, on this slide, the gaps between the blue columns and that red line, well, that's the additional income that we could use to meet our three objectives. In putting together this piece of work, I looked at what other similar organisations are doing in terms of what they charge for membership, but I only looked at cost, not at value. And we know the value that we give to our members is immense. Supporting them at post-incident procedures, CAPLO reps being there when our colleagues are under investigation, equality reps to ensure that they're treated fairly by the job, health and safety reps holding forces to account and keeping workplaces safe. So by any measure, the Federation's incredible value for everything that we do, for everything that you do for our members, for just £17 a month at the moment. I mentioned earlier the COVID-19 outbreak, and we have to consider it during this conversation because it does have an effect on our budget. Because as we know, we should have been together today in Manchester and that event was cancelled, along with some other events, seminars, CPD. But there's also cost to the Federation from COVID. Our external income is essentially zero now for the year because all those bookings have been cancelled. And the virus has had an effect on the stock market, affecting the income that we generate from our investments. All told, when all that's taken into account, we're around £320,000 better off after COVID. And purely financially, that's good news. But you'll remember earlier, I spoke about how our costs rise each year by between £900,000 and £1 million. Well, what that means is, even after the COVID savings, we'd still have to strip away a further £500,000 to £600,000 from our budget. That would truly be an austerity budget for us. And still, even then, the issue with our depleted reserves would remain. But we do have some options. With student officers who are increasingly a large element of our membership and who require large levels of support from us, we can ensure membership remains affordable for them by retaining that 50% discount in their first year. And that would ensure that we're here not just for this intake of new recruits, but for future intakes too. For direct entry inspectors, although that scheme may actually be discontinued in the short term, I believe there's a principle involved whereby they can afford to pay the full membership rates from day one. And finally, with the bulk of our membership who pay those full rates, we had options. I explored doing nothing, but as we've already seen, this would jeopardise our financial future. I explored a £1 a month increase, but this would not fix the issue that we're now in. In fact, it would just require a further large increase next year, and we wouldn't be able to spend more money on our members then. And that's important to me. If we're going to increase subs, I want us to increase what we spend on our members. I considered a £3 a month increase, and certainly that would enable us to fix the problem whilst really increasing the spend on our members. But £3, it just felt like too much of an ask at the minute, especially after such a long time with no increase. So a £2 increase, actually in truth, a £1.60 increase after that tax relief, it's affordable for our colleagues, and it allows us to carefully start to do the things we need to do. £2 allows us to avoid those cuts to our services, and those cuts would have to be substantial. The £2 increase would allow us to do more for our colleagues, as well as repairing that damage to our reserves. But this would require a really good communication strategy. We've put together comms that will go out in the form of FAQ documents, social media content, web content, and this is centred really heavily on demonstrating the value that we give and the fact that we've not touched our sub-rates for such a long time, and even now just by that manageable sum. And this could be a turning point for us after years of austerity and having to cut back, the beginning of being able to expand the value we provide to our colleagues and making sure that we're here fit for purpose well into the future. And so I've got some recommendations. Firstly, to increase the full cost of membership of the Federation from £21.58 to £23.58, or actually, in terms of what it actually costs, from £17.26 to £18.86. And actually, this is an important point to pause on. Even after that increase, if we increase the subs today, our members will still be paying less than many believe that it currently costs them. And the rise would not come into force until our pay rise in September, making it more affordable for all of us. Second, to change that 75% discount in year one to a 50% discount, and only after officers begin to enjoy pay rises in year two do they pay more for that membership. And finally, for our direct entry colleagues to pay the same amount as all of us. And so those are our recommendations. Please, when you're asked to vote shortly, vote to support these changes. Vote to support the work that we all do on behalf of our members every day. And vote to make sure that we're still able to do that work for them well into the future. Thank you for listening.
Simon, thanks very much for the presentation. As you know, we've had a number of questions that have been sent in, and in fairness, a good chunk of those questions have been answered in your presentation, but there's still a number that I think it's important that we get covered. But before we do, I get emailed and phone calls and speak to colleagues an awful lot about our finances. And one of the continuous questions that people ask, legitimately, is, well, we're sitting on tens of millions of pounds anyway, so why are we asking our members to dig deep and pay even more for their monthly subscriptions? In fact, the last email I had said that we're sitting on £85 million. So what is the reality? What are our finances like?
That's a fair question. I've seen those figures myself on social media and elsewhere. First thing I'd say, John, is that the figures just aren't accurate, and they never have been. But secondly, they include not just the cash and the investments, but the property, the buildings that the Federation own, our offices that our members can go to see us. I know how much money that we've got in the central reserves, and I check it every day because I'm not worried about it. And when I checked it this morning, it's £8.66 million. So just over £8.5 million. That's how much we've got in reserves.
I also want to ask, because colleagues have been asking me this since this proposal's been put out there, the £2 figure. Now, I know it's been covered in your presentation, but how did we reach £2? Was it a figure out the air? Did you just pluck it from somewhere? Where does it come from?
Fair question. And I looked at a range of options actually, and the first one was don't put it up at all, zero. But as I spoke about in the presentation, that gives us the issues with drawing down on our reserves year after year, and the money runs out. So then I looked at £1, and what does £1 give for us? £1 increase would start to repair some of that damage, but it doesn't allow us to start to expand what we spend on our members and our reps, and that's really important to me. So then I looked at £3. £3, that does the trick. We'll repair the damage fairly quickly, and we can really start to expand. But for me, after a decade of not touching subs, £3 felt like a step too far for our members. What does £2 do? £2 starts to repair that damage, and it starts to make sure that we can give our members real, proper value.
Thank you. These are questions from delegates. And the first one, with the poor pay being offered to our new recruits, are we at risk of discouraging them from joining the Federation by increasing the percentage of officers' pay? I think that's a really fair question. You know, our new recruits are the lowest paid, and financially, you could argue, the most vulnerable.
That's a really good question. It's really important. And you're right, the pay at the beginning is poor when you join the police. But what we have to show is the value you get from membership of the Federation. And especially at that first part of their career when they're probably more likely to need our support than ever, when they're just finding their feet, we're still giving them that really generous 50% discount, quite right too. So for the first year, they're still paying out of their pocket just over £9. And we need to remember that they're still getting superb value and amazing support from our network of reps at a huge discount.
Lovely, thank you. And the next question, it's about number 2 accounts. And you know, the delegates watching this will know what the number 2 accounts are. And the question says, number 2 accounts maintained by regional federations has been raised before by the national media and to damaging effect. The inference has been that these accounts are used to squirrel away large amounts of money with very little oversight as to how the funds are used. Before agreeing to increased national member subscriptions, can we be assured that Police Federation are satisfied that no regional federations are sitting on undeclared funds in a number 2 account or similar?
I think that's a fair question, and the short answer is yes, we can absolutely give you that assurance, but how do we know that that's the case? Well, over the last couple of years, the Federation has been through a process that we've called additional funds. And what that's done is that's identified areas of Federation spend that belong to our members and areas that seem very, very similar, but actually legally they're in a different pot. So that's like your group insurance. Now those are all held in trust, they're separate from the Federation. And we all think of them, I'm a member as well, we all think of them as the same, but they're legally separate. And what we've done with our audit process, both internal and external, is we've been able to account for every single penny that's in that Federation side of things. And we know where every single penny is. So we can be assured that Federation money hasn't left the Federation basically and gone elsewhere. Totally give you that assurance.
And the next question, did you not consider having a regular and smaller increase each year in line with inflation or pay rises?
I did, and actually that was going to be one of the recommendations that I was going to bring. What I want us to be able to do is get away from this. It's almost like a roller coaster where we don't touch subs for a decade and then it's a bigger increase and then we don't touch it again. I would much rather a very small increase every year that comes on the 1st of September when we get our pay rise, and it's really easy to absorb. So why didn't I just do it? Well, our rules don't allow us to do it, and we can't just change our rules without going through the Home Office. I thought about inflation as that benchmark. My concern for the future is that inflation, if that's really high and the pay rise is low, it's less affordable. So for the future, and I'll be coming back to the organisation probably in a year's time, I want to tie it into our pay rise so our members are never asked to pay more as a percentage than the pay rise they've just been given by government.
The next question, can we have reassurances that if these proposals go through, that there is an effective communications plan for all members as to why this happened and what this means to them? If you'll allow me, I think I'll pick up this one. I mean, Simon, communications are essential with the members, and nothing is more important than the money that they're paying for the service we're providing. I can reassure all of our members and the delegates who are going to be voting shortly that there is a comms plan wrapped around this for all eventualities. It's got a detailed FAQ built into it, so many of these questions that are being asked will be covered in there as well. And what I would say, this is a living document, which means if delegates or members feel that things aren't covered, then contact us and we'll add it. So hopefully people will feel reassured by that. So if we can move on with the next question. This is really poignant for us at the moment, and I think I'm really pleased that this has been sent in. There's an awful lot of anger from colleagues who are involved in the pension challenge. Would it be feasible to increase the subscriptions to a higher level than proposed to fund those officers who are in the Lead A challenge?
Biggest issue at the minute. And just like you, I get a lot of questions. One of the things that I looked at when I was looking at the income subscription is, well, how much would that actually cost? Because until we know that, we can't just dismiss it. We have to know that number. So what I've done is I've looked at what I understand to be the current legal bill from Lee Day, and I'm not in the challenge, but I understand it's about £18.5 million at the moment. So then I just did some maths. What would that cost? If we were to split that cost across our entire membership, including the ones who've only joined last week, we'd be looking at increasing all of our subs, every one of us, by about £14 per month for a year. And that is an enormous, enormous increase. We're taking our time over a £2 increase, and quite right too. £14, and that just feels like it's too much to ask, especially, like I say, if you only joined last week, you were never in the 87 scheme. Having to pay that £14 a month extra, that seems like a lot to ask. And I guess the next thing is simply, we've got less than £9 million in the bank. And the Lee Day bill, as I understand it, £18.5 million. There's simply not the money there to do it.
Can I ask, Simon, if this goes through, what will it mean? What will it mean to members? What will they see other than an extra bit of money going out in their subscriptions? What will it mean to them?
Probably, maybe this is the most important question. What's the whole point of doing this? And it would allow us to do 3 really important things. And the first one, let's be honest, it's important, but it's dull. And that's repairing that damage that we've done to our reserves so that the Federation's there in years to come. So that the Federation's there sticking up for our members, supporting our members. So we've got this network of reps. We need to repair that damage. But we've got to do more than that. I said in my presentation, judge me and judge treasurers on what we spend on our members. So the second thing is, let's start to be more visible to our membership at all levels, spending more on the things that are important to them. And they'll tell us what's important to them. And then the third thing, and this gets forgotten too often, and it winds me up because it's so important, let's give better support to our reps so that when our members need them, our reps have got the tools that they need, the training that they need, and we're there for our members. Let's do those 3 things.
Thanks for that, Simon. And I appreciate that's just a handful of questions, but you've covered an awful lot in the presentation. And I'll just repeat, far more detail will come out depending on the vote. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, colleagues, that's the question and answer session. And as I've said, and I'll repeat myself, there's going to be far more information coming out depending on the outcome of the vote, which is next. So now it's over to you. So please, can you check your devices? The vote will be coming out to you now, unless you've already got it. And the vote will start from now, and it will be open for half an hour. Once the half an hour stage has passed, and a clock will come up on the screen so you'll know how long the voting portal is open for, but once it's closed, then you can't vote after that. So please make sure you cast your vote. I'll remind you, this is 1 member, 1 vote. So every delegate has the option to vote on all 3 of the recommendations that have been presented to you. Then following the half an hour cut-off, there'll then be another half hour for us to just qualify the responses and make sure that technically everything's worked as it should. And then after that, I'll come back and I'll give you the results. Thank you so much for taking part in this virtual conference. I appreciate there's been a big dump of information for you to absorb. This is really important. This is about having your say. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. Welcome back and thank you for your patience. I can confirm that the voting has been complete and all of the data has been verified. Interesting to add that of all of those eligible to vote, we've had a 90% turnout, so thank you so much. And I'm going to go through the motions one by one and then give you the results. So motion 1, which reads, with effect 1st of September 2020, the monthly voluntary subscription rate to PFEW to be £23.58. Total votes cast were 401. Those in favour, 354, and those against, 47. So that motion is carried and ratified. Motion number 2, with effect 1st of September 2020, student officers who elect to subscribe to PFEW will be entitled to a 50% discount rate for the first year of their service. Thereafter, they will pay the normal subscription rate. Those student officers who commence subscriptions to PFEW prior to the 1st of September 2020 will continue to be entitled to a 75% discount rate during their first year of service and a 50% discounted rate for their second year of service. Total votes cast 401. Those in favour 373 and those against 28. That motion is carried and ratified. The third motion, with effect from the 1st of September 2020, those who join the service on the direct entry inspector scheme will pay the full subscription rate. Those who commence subscriptions to PFEW prior to the 1st of September 2020 will continue to be entitled to a 75% discount rate during their first year of service and 50% discounted rate for their second year of service. Total votes cast were 401. Those in favour 389 and those against was 12. That motion is carried and ratified. So that concludes the process. Thank you so much for engaging and for taking part. First time we've ever done anything like this. Thankfully, the technology did work. I know this isn't ideal to do things in this way, and hopefully with everything crossed, then next year we will meet in Manchester, but with the last 2 years we've had, who knows what's going to happen. So it leaves me to say a big thank you to you, our delegates. Thank you to the team who's put this together, because I know it's been technology-wise a big ask. And I would say safe journey home, but I know most of you are at work now, so have a safe remainder of the day and take care. Thank you.